who I am. Now if somebody would...
First, I just want to acknowledge that the loss of your mom. So I'm very sorry that you had to experience that so young. And also, I'm not going to give you like the response to the N-word, like, oh, I'm so appalled and I'm so sorry. Because it's like, I do feel that way. I'm very sorry that happens. But it infuriates me also. And also, it's like my response to it, it's like, it's such a bizarre space to be as a white person. In the sense that, you know, I feel the anger and the fury towards that level of racism, the audacity and the boldness to treat anybody unlovingly and with unkindness, and so specifically with a word that is so socially and emotionally charged.
Yeah, it's not a mistake.
It is not a mistake. Yeah. It's very intentional.
Yeah.
Then I also wrestle with the fact that, actually, I don't even know what race the person was. I'm assuming that they were white.
Caucasity, correct.
Caucasian, right. So I'm learning so much about, like my own relationship to race. And I'm a white suburban hockey mom. Like that's just who I am, and I'm straight. That is my experience. I was married for 27 years. That's just my experience falls much more into the sort of what we would have called traditional before. So I always am sensitive to the not coming across sort of disingenuous or trying to find a way to connect on a moment that would be so impactful for you. But I'm in the category of the enemy, if you will. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, but like it's a foreign concept to you. It's not necessarily that you're the enemy. It's just that's something that will never cross your path.
No.
And that's just a reality. Like it's true. You are who you are. You're a cis white hetero woman.
That's right.
Who's got friggin' 7 kids.
Exactly.
That's not necessarily the norm.
I know, and it's funny because all this language and the terminology and stuff. And I actually had a moment because I went through a divorce. So I've been divorced now for about 3 years, going on for 3.5 or so.
I didn't realize it was that chunk of time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and. But I had a moment, no joke, so I have a lot of friends in the queer community in Ottawa, and I had this conversation, and I said, I actually had a moment where I was like, am I straight? And it seems funny, but it's when you're raised, I was raised in the church.
Okay.
So you're raised with a set of conditions and a set of expectations, and there was never a moment where you ever had a conversation about it or anything, where you ever had like wonder or self-reflection or anything. No, this is what was expected. Kind of a little bit like schooling, like the way you described it. You're expected to do well and, do well in school. So I had that moment in these really deep conversations where I was like, how do I know? Am I actually straight? Like, how do I actually know? Which seems like such a silly question, but when you have been conditioned so much in a certain way, so I had to sort of reevaluate and sort of reset up. So I will never have the experience that you have being insulted that way. So I don't want to be disingenuous about it because I have no way to relate to that. I have no way to know. But I find it and again, you're saying, you turned it into a positive. And yes, you did turn it into a positive because you chose to. But there is a gift in it in the sense that...
But rather, I wouldn't say I turned it into a positive. I just more decided not for that to impact me in the way that it could.
Right. You didn't give it power.
It's not necessarily turning into a positive. It's
it's not letting it have power.
Exactly.
Taking
the power out of it. And regaining autonomy over the experience. So like I said, the first feeling that I had about it was shame. And there's a lot of BIPOC and Black community groups that I'm part of. And it's an opportunity to chat about it and just putting that out there and talking to folks about it and kind of having that rhetoric reiterated, the feeling of why is it that we feel embarrassed by this when it's somebody else's crappy behavior, hurtful, crappy rage, irrationally rage-fueled behavior that's causing harm to us. So I think I don't really want to posit it as turning it into a positive, but rather not letting it like completely destroy me.
Right.
Because that's what it initially it could easily do, especially in the state that I was at where, you know, we were vulnerable as artists because we hadn't been performing.
Yeah.
I was feeling really like vulnerable in a state of mind because losing my mom and trying to figure out like how to move through grief and how to continue doing music when so many things are unpredictable, right? So yeah, so I would say just to say it wasn't necessarily turning it into a positive, but rather allowing me to take control over it and then really looking at my own artistry and what I want to say in this world. The content that I want to put out, and really putting out content that elevates my communities, like my Black community, my queer community, elevates it, gives a voice to it, to marginalized folks in terms of being representative.
Yeah.
Like I never, like when I go on stage, I never want to go on stage in a way that is not very clear what my communities are and the pride that I have in being a representative of those communities. I want to like present music and present content that positively reflects my communities.
So do you have a sense now as a performer that it has a more grounded, more whole experience?
Yeah, I would say that's a great way to describe it. And I again, the reason why I feel so silly about it when I kind of made the decision to personally go by my Setswana name and incorporate more of like my heritage in my music is because how could I not realize that huge part of myself was missing? Like, how could it like not be so obvious? That's why I sometimes feel silly about it, because it's like,
well, I know, listening to you, I think some of that answer is in the desire for your parents to assimilate. For the survival thing. So the messaging was, you know, here we are, here is Western culture, embrace it, here you go. So it doesn't surprise me in hearing your story that there would have been sort of, and maybe not a blind spot, but just a recognition that there was a feeling from moving from Botswana to here that you were moving forward, away from, you know, a different, as opposed to another aspect or another side of you. So and especially in the music business. Like you wouldn't have gotten any signals, I don't think. I mean, I don't know how many years ago we're talking what the spread of years are.
In the early 2000s.
Okay, so that, like all the messaging you would have gotten from
radio play, what's popular, of course. Yeah, so that's the thing. It's like this duality of like, you know, wanting to assimilate in this new place that you're in, as well as the societal cues and you know, notes that you're getting on a daily basis of what's in, what's popular, what's, you know,
what sells.
What sells. I mean, not that I was thinking about that at the time, but like, those influences were, you know,
like what's the path to success? Like, what is the most likely way that I'm going to build the biggest audience or get my music out to the most people?
Yeah, and it's ironic. I sometimes think about this. You know, when the first band that I was in was called the Kimberly Sundstrom Band.
Okay,
super unique.
It was so great. I love that, the simplicity. So, in your consideration, it's such a fascinating pivotal point, I think, in your life. Where I can relate to, this is what I can relate to, is the feeling of leaning in, the feeling of this is all of me. This is truly who I am.
Knowing it's like the right direction.
Yeah, it takes bravery and courage to step into who you are, because what I find really interesting about what you said though was, and this is going to make me cry, is I thought I was already invited to all the tables. I thought I was already sitting at all the right tables. And it took the one individual with that powerful insult to shine a light.
To realize that you're not actually sitting at the tables. Yeah.
Like,
wholeheartedly.
To me, that is the idea that somebody doesn't feel or recognize it, that they may not be at the table, is crushing to me.
Yeah, and I've chatted about this. I remember speaking on a panel about this a few months ago with Kwende. I think you might know Kwende. And Yasmina, who runs Ashe Fest, Ashe World Fest, sorry. And just like the perfection that marginalized artists have to embody and the zero room for error, you know. So, you know, thinking that I'm sitting at the tables that I actually wasn't, also relates to, you know, I do a lot of like gig performances, like cover gig performances. Right. That's something that is also part of my income strategy. Not really
as
strategy.
in having income.
I love that. I love love paying bills. And it's like, you know, I play at many of the different venues in Ottawa, and I have seen, you know, my male white counterparts going to the gig, getting completely drunk or using drugs and performing and having no repercussions for this. And this also was evident with the pandemic. So many artists were so like casually vocal about supporting the convoy. Did I say pandemic or convoy? I meant to say convoy.
Oh yeah, it's all kind of mushed together.
Yeah, supporting the convoy and supporting like it so like passionately, and not having the foresight to realize how harmful that is to so many communities, and what like the devastating impacts of the convoy, and putting it out there on their social medias and like going and singing at the rallies and whatnots. And those artists having no impact on their careers, on their...
No consequences.
No consequences.
Because if you, as a BIPOC artist, got drunk and took drugs and did a gig, like...
I would never get that gig again.
Right.
Absolutely. So, yeah, so like a lot of layers. I mean, this is we could have like a 4-hour conversation on this.
Well, I would love to. One of the series that I want to do is just all about, you know, marginalized artists and stuff. And I'm struggling. You can maybe help me with this. I'm struggling with right now the Canadian government in our funding. In our funding structures for the arts, they've done a big shift to EDI. So EDI is the conversation of the day. Every organization is writing their EDI policies. You know, we all collectively signed the agreement that as an organization in the music industry that we would commit to EDI, that we would look at racist policies we may have, or, you know, do the internal work, you know, inside our organizations. I love all of that. No problem with any of that. But they've attached it to money now. So there is an element of the funding that's like in the coming year or so, and don't quote me, we can go do the actual research, I'll put it in the comments, that your access to funding is going to be dependent on your EDI. So, or your representation of artists across all the spectrums and stuff like that. Again, fundamentally believe in that, so great. But does it put us in a spot where we're going to, where because it's attached to money, there'll be an inauthenticity in the process? Or do we have to be that extreme? Does the pendulum have to be that extreme to go the other way in order for it to fall and we find balance somehow? Like, what is the best path to balance? Because we do need to do a lot of work and funding needs to be more accessible. But there's something about it that feels like it's still the white people deciding. Does that make sense? I don't know how to use the right language for this.
White people deciding. That's the title of this.
Right? Like that, you know what I mean? Like it's still...
I mean, yes.
I mean, it's good efforts, but there's something that feels off to me about it, but I can't put my finger on it.
Well, I think that, I think you're more on, I think you're getting to your point more than you realize. And again, I'm not the voice on this. I can't necessarily, I don't have a business. I can't really speak to that. But in order to, you know, have these conversations and create more equality and diversity, we live in a capitalist society, right? Yeah. Like money is the power. And we have instilled this for decades. There's no other way to kind of express power. Not that there shouldn't be. Not that it should be. I am not about the capitalist life. But at the end of the day, we all need to pay bills. We all need to eat. We all need to all of these things. And I guess I can't remember. I was sitting at something, and you know, there was this white gentleman who was trying to express himself and really struggling, and he came down to, and like, there's nothing wrong with what he said. He came down to it being like, you know, the thing that really I'm struggling with in terms of like creating these diversity and having these conversation is that I miss my voice being at the center. And I think that was like more poignant than he really realized. And I think that's the thing. It's been the pendulum has been on one side for so long, and the voices and the representation and the media, like growing up, I never saw anybody in the media that looked like me. You know, I didn't see any queer representation or anything along those lines. So I think, again, I don't know what the correct way to do it. I don't think anybody really knows because the conversation is still sadly quite new, right?
Yeah.
This idea of kind of like creating pockets and businesses and organizations that reflect and represent the world accurately is still very new. And like, I think there's obviously gonna be a lot of mistakes in how to do that. And, you know, one of the big ones is tokenization, which I've been a sucker to. I say sucker because it's the minute you realize that's what's happening, you're just like, right?
Yes.
So that's it. And I think that's what you're kind of like alluding to, is the idea that like this inauthentic, like, let's just hire some black folks. Because it checks a box.
And I'm like, they're not a box check. We're talking about humans.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's really what it comes down to. Power and money are like the driving force of our society, sadly, and the conversations are so new that it's hard to figure out the best way to kind of
go forward.
But yeah, I think that there's a lot of organizations that are doing it so well and doing it with intention, but obviously not everybody's going to be able to take the time and effort to really like look inwardly and then like see what that denotes, you know. So
as a member of the country music community, I struggle.
Your community has got some work to do.
And I'm not exclusively that.
No, I love country music, but it's true. There's been like some serious setbacks.
And I'm just like, and then for me, it's like, is the solution staying loud about it?
Yes.
Or is the solution like, no, I can't anymore. And just, you know, moving on to, because my music kind of dances in both spaces. I can do adult contemporary, but even my own artists, like my country artists, and we talk about this. I'm like, I have a moral issue with, you know, XYZ, whatever it is. And we all get it, and everybody is on the same page. And you can feel a little bit lost as far as what can we actually do? Like, what can you do? So what advice would you give as somebody who lives, who experiences, and even the word marginalized, right? Like, I even hesitate to say the word marginalized because I don't know that there's another word. It is the best word to use, and we all use that. You know, there's so much sadness in that word for me because I think it's because one of my core wounds is rejection. So the feeling of being on the margins or not allowed in or not at the table, I mean, it hits me from my own experience of that for different reasons. But what advice would you give to somebody like me, who's a white woman who cis? Tell me what it is.
Cis white hetero woman.
Cis white hetero. And so, what does cis refer? If
you were born in the gender that you are.
Oh, okay. Cool.
And you present yourself in the gender that
I am. Yeah. Okay, so that's a gender identity. White is race, and hetero is the sexualities, because it's three things, right? So it's race, sexuality, and gender identity. So as somebody like me who's running a label, who really wants to be sensitive and aware and inclusive and honest and authentic and real about everything, what is some advice you would give, or to somebody like me to help artists like yourself?
I mean, gosh, that's such a big question. I don't have the answer to this. I don't
It's
know.
a whole other show.
Or I don't know, T.A.R.A. I get what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
I totally get it, because it's true. The music that you make, as well as the artists that you have on your roster, I think, are more folky and more country.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Not saying that there's not a door for marginalized folks to be in that space, but yeah, there is. You can paint it as it is. There's it's definitely like an overrepresentation of a certain type of person that goes into that genre. I don't have an answer for you for that, but what I do see is that, I see you and your organization going to events like a Shea World Fest and being open to learning and growing, and that I think doesn't go on, like I said, doesn't go unseen. Yeah. I think those are important things, important factors in terms of just being open to continuing to learn, being open to taking some risks, maybe like, again, I don't know. I'm just saying stuff.
No,
because you've got your stuff together.
Well, thank you.
So it's like you asking me a question like that. I'm like, yeah, but you're good.
She really looks like she knows what she's doing.
So yeah, I mean, like, I guess.
I mean, the growing and the learning thing, like that really resonates because I am that way naturally as a person. Like I really like to grow and learn, and I'm going to make mistakes.
Yeah, of course,
right?
Everyone makes mistakes.
Yes.
We all say stupid stuff
Yeah.
at some point. There's not a person in this world who has not made a mistake, present company included. It's what you do with that mistake that is the difference, right? Like, are you going to stick your heels in and like or dig your heels in and just stay in that realm, or are you going to grow? I think of my dad, who's in his 70s, and he's a cis white hetero white man.
Okay.
But I think of my dad, and that being said, he's incredible in terms of his ability to. He's like lived in many different parts of the world and really kind of like embraced and seen so much, right? Especially being married to a black woman and raising biracial kids and just like living in places where there was a little bit of animosity. They met during apartheid in Botswana. They couldn't go like walking hand in hand down the street. That kind of experience. But like at some point, as we get older, it's harder and harder to kind of like continue to move and grow. Right? We can either kind of sit back or not. And the other day I'm having a conversation, or a few months ago I'm having a conversation with my dad, and we're talking, and he said something about Catherine McKinney and used she pronouns, and then he's like, oh wait, Catherine McKinney uses they them pronouns, right? This is my dad. This is my 70-something-year-old dad. And I was like, hell yeah, Dad! And he's like, I've been reading about this, and I really need to just learn how to be more comfortable expressing pronouns. And it's like what he's saying is so true, but deeper than what he's saying is like that is not something that he grew up with. No. But it's okay to not know, and it's okay to continue to grow. Yeah. And there's gonna, again, everybody. I'm a queer woman. I am a lesbian, and I have memories of myself using the term gay in a derogatory manner. Right. You know what I'm saying? So everybody has said and done things that are not cute. Yeah. But it's a matter of whether or not we're willing to grow and learn and like be inclusive and be supportive and like embrace change and embrace difference. I think that's personally like
oh, absolutely. I mean, there's so much truth.
The way to go forward with it.
And part of me coming into knowing who I am is knowing that I was born with privilege. And I have privilege. It's a hard thing to admit. Yeah, it's a hard thing to admit for a lot of people. And understanding privilege and then understanding how to use that position of privilege to make change or to make things better, which is where I found some peace with some of it is, okay, well, how can I use my experience, to make things better or help people be more aware.
I think that's also it. You're saying like have peace with it. And like, I think that there's this, like you're hitting a really important part, like acknowledging that you have privilege is not saying that you don't work hard, is not saying that you should feel guilty about it. Like it's just a matter. It's just a factual situation. How the society that we live in has unfolded, and that's it. Like
it's a comment on the systems.
Yes, it's not a personal attack.
I know I'm a hard worker. It's not that at all.
Yes, it's not a personal attack, and I think that's the difference.
But my hard climb, and somebody who's not white from a what I would say, I used to say Canadian poor. Like we grew up on social, like on welfare, on and off of welfare. But I always had a roof over my head. I grew up with food insecurity maybe, but my dad always worked really hard to do what he could. So my experience was still very privileged, really, really privileged. And so, it's a choice to stop and try to connect with somebody from their perspective of, and understanding that my hard climb and somebody else's hard climb, they were different sides of the mountain.
Exactly. They're not in competition with each other.
And they're not worse or better. Like suffering and challenge is not a competition.
No, it's true.
And, if we can find that space with each other. I just love talking to you. I think I would love to, I hope you come back. I would love to have.
Now that I know where it is.
Yeah, now that you know where we are in the boonies.
I'm here next week. I'm like, hey.
And I'd love to have more conversation just about, in the arts and how we can, help each other to bring that balance, that sense of balance and equity and just equal opportunity for people. And there's a lot of work to do because there's all the audience education.
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
There's a lot.
I think that's the other thing. I mean, one, I want to just say that's like, it's really lovely chatting with you too. I know we were talking about like, are we nervous? Like, I have so much respect for you. I think that what you're doing is really amazing. And I think that, like, again, I really recognize what you're trying to accomplish as well. And it's no easy task. It is a journey that you are on. And but I think that, like exactly what you're saying. Like, we're just trying to make it so that everybody has a voice. Like, and that's the thing. I always say, the old music industry, and I say old music industry, but like music industry historically has had this like path of trying to make it seem like a competition and make it seem like not everybody's going to make it. But in reality, the way that the music industry is evolving and the resources that are out there, like, I really believe that there is a voice for everybody, and it's okay. It's okay not to fit in every voice or every area, but it's really okay to have your voice heard. And it's like, the more voices, the more different kind of expressions that we have in all arts, like, it's just going to be more fruitful for everybody.
And you will find your people.
Yes.
When you raise your voice, and it's more possible now than ever to build a sustainable living in music because of the internet, and technology is affordable. So the major label model that was sort of thrown at us all the time, and always like, this is the only way to success, or this is the epitome of success. It doesn't hold true the same way anymore. Like, you really can when you, and it's a beautiful thing when you really come into your own and you find your own voice. And you're like, oh, there she is. That's wholly who I am. It's amazing what happens from it. Like, I'm into like vibration, all that stuff. What is drawn to you the minute you click into that alignment. And it's a beautiful thing. So and I really see that in you, and I wish you the best with your music and everything. And we will have you back for more conversations.
Yes.
Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure.
It's been another T.A.R.A. Sessions. I'm T.A.R.A. Shannon. Thanks so much for watching.
I know who I am.